decade of dramatic economic growth following the bloody 1989 crackdown on pro-democracy protesters in Tiananmen Square. Russia this week continued to carry out strikes on civilian buildings and critical energy infrastructure in Ukraine, leaving millions of people without power as temperatures dropped well below zero. A United Nations team of investigators began assessing whether those attacks amount to war crimes. From Brussels, FSN's Rosie Burchard.
The UN team has already found evidence that Russian troops committed war crimes in occupied areas earlier this year, with rape and torture among the accusations that were laid out. Well, now these investigators say they're looking into whether recent attacks on energy infrastructure, which were described by the US recently as barbaric, whether those attacks could also be tried as war crimes at some point in the future. The team said they're particularly concerned about the impact of these attacks on children.
US President Joe Biden welcomed French President Emmanuel Macron to the White House, where they reaffirmed their strong alliance, in particular in relation to supporting Ukraine against Russia. It was the first state visit of the Biden administration, despite some cracks showing in those relations. FSN's US correspondent Kate Fisher watched the meeting between the two leaders in the US Capitol.
President Biden said the two countries were united in standing up to Putin and that he would meet the Russian president if he showed a willingness to end the war.
We're going to continue working together to hold Russia accountable for their actions.
But there were also differences of opinion. President Macron said Joe Biden's legislation subsidizing the US electric vehicle industry could put European EV manufacturers at a disadvantage. Biden said he was confident the two could work out a deal.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, remembering Christine McVie. Brilliant Fleetwood Mac member died on Wednesday in a London hospital at the age of 79. She was born in Britain's Lake District to a father who was a concert violinist and a mother who was a psychic. Her talent, exhibited here in Songbird from Fleetwood Mac's Rumours album, was entirely innate, unforced, and on many tracks understated, and yet also dominant. As a youngster, she was a fan of the first iteration of Fleetwood Mac in the 1960s. In the 1970s, she joined the band. Music scholar and DJ Paul Gambaccini.
Lo and behold, a self-titled album generated two hit singles, both written and sung by Christine. The first was Over My Head, and that is the one that really broke the group as we know them. And the follow-up to the self-titled album was Rumours. It has sold over 40 million copies.
McVie took a 16-year hiatus from Fleetwood Mac at the turn of the century, but returned in 2014 and found fresh success with Lindsey Buckingham. Fleetwood Mac called her the best musician anyone could have in their band and the best friend anyone could have in their life. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
In the main news again of this week, China eased COVID-19 quarantine protocols and reduced mass testing following a wave of protests against the government's zero-COVID policy. Russia continued to carry out strikes on civilian buildings and critical infrastructure in Ukraine. The United Nations began assessing whether those attacks amounted to war crimes. And in the first state visit of the Biden administration, US President Joe Biden welcomed French President Emmanuel Macron to the White House. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
It's Monsieur Joe Bolden, Passenger SDR class sounds Irish. Hello friends, I'm Joe Bolden and I'd like to welcome you to this program, Sounds Irish. On this program you'll hear all types, styles and genre of Irish music. Traditional, folk, ballads, country and Irish and old-time Irish songs. With some